The New York Times versus the United States is more commonly known as the Pentagon Papers case. This case revolves around the First Amendment and more specifically the right of freedom of press. On June 12, 1971, the New York Times published portions of documents relating to the Vietnam War and the Tonkin Gulf incident. These documents together became known as the Pentagon Papers. The documents were given to the New York Times by former government consultant by the name of Daniel Ellsberg. It was unauthorized of him to give the papers to the New York Times, and when the United States government found out about them being published, they took action, saying that the papers jeopardized national security. The government sought injunction against the papers to keep them from further being published. The court issued a temporary restraining order on the New York Times when the company declined the government's request for injunction. This was issued by a U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. The New York Times immediately denied their request, stating that the publication of the historical documents would not seriously breach national security. The U.S. immediately appealed that to the Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, and this court kept the same decision made as the previous court. On June 24th, the New York Times appealed to the Supreme Court, and the court made their decision on June 30th. The Supreme Court decided that they would remove this restraining order on the New York Times because there was not enough of a burden on the papers that were published that the United States had described. In addition, Justice William J. Brennan stated that never before has the U.S. sought to enjoin a newspaper from publishing information in its possession. This is a direct infringement of the First Amendment. More specifically, the right of freedom of the press. The freedom of the press is the right in the First Amendment where the press are protected and are allowed to publish documents that serve the people, and in those documents the press are allowed to censure the government. Without this, the government would have no bias. Therefore, when the United States government tried to censor the documents that the New York Times had published, it was a direct infringement of the First Amendment.